I am Joshua, 32 years old, and I stood there while my own brother called the police to have me removed from a house I grew up in. Before I tell you about the moment the handcuffs clicked and the truth finally came out, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. I love seeing how far this story travels. It started on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic, stormy Tuesday, just a regular, dusty afternoon in the attic of my childhood home. Mom was moving to a smaller condo. She said the old place was too big, too full of ghosts. But we all knew the truth. She was selling it to help pay for Mason's latest business expansion. That's how it always worked in our family. Mason dreamed, and the rest of us paid. I was the one packing the boxes, of course. Mason was too busy closing deals and managing assets. I didn't mind the work. It was quiet. The air up there smelled like cedar and old insulation, a smell that reminded me of my dad. He'd been gone 5 years, but up here, his presence was thick in the air. I shifted a stack of National Geographics and saw it. A wooden cigar box, tucked behind a rafter. I knew that box. Dad used to keep his spare change and screws in it. But when I opened it, there was no loose change. Just a single envelope, sealed with wax, and a watch. The watch was a Timex, scratched face, leather strap worn dark by sweat. It was the watch he wore every day at the factory. But the letter had my name on it. Joshua. Not Mason. Just me. My hands, usually steady, surgeon steady, they used to say, were trembling. I slid my finger under the flap. The paper was brittle. Son, it read, "If you are reading this, I'm gone. I know you feel like you're walking in a shadow. I know Mason takes up all the air in the room. But I need you to know something I never said enough. You are the strong one. Mason is loud, but you are solid. Don't let your brother define your value. Don't let him rewrite your history. You were born to serve a higher purpose, not to serve his ego. I am proud of the man you are becoming." I sat there on the floorboards, dust motes dancing in the shaft of light coming through the vent, and I felt a lump in my throat the size of a fist. Dad saw. He had always seen. My phone buzzed, shattering the moment. The screen lit up. Mason. I stared at it. I didn't want to answer. I wanted to stay in this moment with Dad. But habit is a dangerous thing. I swiped right. "You're late," Mason's voice boomed. No hello. No asking how Mom was. "I'm packing up the attic, Mason. Like I said I would." "Yeah, well, take a break. I need you at the house this Saturday. It's the barbecue for Tiffany's dad. The Colonel is retiring, finally. It's a huge networking opportunity for me. I need everything perfect." "I'm not your caterer, Mason." "I know that," he scoffed. "I hired caterers. Real ones. I need you to help with parking and general logistics. Just be there. And Josh." "What?" "Wear long sleeves. Linen. Something breathable so you don't sweat. But long. Nobody wants to see that thing on your arm while they're trying to eat ribs. It ruins the appetite." He hung up before I could answer. I looked down at my right arm. The tissue was gnarled. A roadmap of pink and white keloid scars that twisted from my wrist all the way up to my shoulder. It looked like melted wax. It was ugly, yes, but it was mine. I drove home in my truck. It's a 2015 Ford F-150, reliable, paid off. It had a few dents, a little rust on the wheel well. I liked it. It was honest. Unlike Mason's world. Mason drove a Porsche 911 GT3. He leased it, wrote it off as a business expense, and complained constantly about the insurance premiums. That Saturday, I pulled up to Mason's gate. It was a sprawling estate in a gated community, the kind of place where the grass is measured with a ruler and the neighbors sue you if your trash can is visible from the street. The driveway was already full of luxury sedans. BMWs, Mercedes, a few Teslas. I idled my truck at the entrance. Mason came jogging out. He was wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget and boat shoes. He looked the part of the successful CEO. "Whoa, whoa!" He waved his hands, signaling me to stop. He walked up to my window. "You can't park this here." "Good to see you too, Mason," I said. "Don't start." Look at this thing. It's leaking oil. You're going to stain the pavers. Park it on the street. No, actually, park it around the block. The neighbors are already on edge about the noise. I have the cooler you asked for in the back. Heavy ice. Fine. Drop it off, then move the truck. And did you bring the shirt? I looked down. I was wearing a clean, pressed t-shirt. My arm was visible. It's 90 degrees out, Mason. I told you, he hissed, his eyes darting around to see if any of his important guests were watching. Long sleeves. Put on a jacket. Anything. Just cover it up. Tiffany is already stressed out about the floral arrangements. She doesn't need your war stories on display. I reversed the truck. I parked 3 blocks away, in front of a fire hydrant because there was no other space. I walked back in the heat. By the time I got to the gate, sweat was trickling down my back. I had a flannel shirt in my bag. I put it on over my t-shirt. It was suffocating. I walked into the backyard. It was like a scene from a magazine. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, a jazz band playing softly in the corner. The smell of expensive meat smoking on the grill filled the air. Tiffany was by the pool, holding a glass of Chardonnay. She looked brittle, like if you tapped her, she'd shatter. When she saw me, her lip curled just a fraction. Joshua, she said, you made it. The ice is melting in the main tub. Can you handle that? Hello, Tiffany. You look nice. Thanks. She turned away, dismissing me. Oh, and try to stay out of the background of the photos. We hired a professional photographer, and we want a certain aesthetic. I went to the bar, grabbed a bag of ice, and started refilling the coolers. I felt like a servant in my brother's kingdom. I looked around at these people. They were talking about stock options, about their summer houses in the Hamptons, about which private school had the best lacrosse team. I thought about the letter in my pocket. You were born to serve, not to please. They didn't know what service was. They thought service was what the waiter did when he brought them a refill. They didn't know about the kind of service that costs you pieces of yourself. I saw Mason across the lawn, laughing loudly at a joke made by a gray-haired man in a suit. Mason clapped the man on the shoulder, a little too hard. He was desperate. I could smell it on him. He needed this retirement party to go well because he needed investors. The rumors were that his tech startup wasn't doing as well as he pretended. He was leveraging Mom's house, leveraging his marriage, leveraging everything to keep the appearance of success alive. Hey, soldier boy! A voice sneered behind me. It was Connor, one of Mason's college buddies. He was a vice president of something at a bank. He was already drunk. Connor? I nodded, keeping my head down. Hot day for flannel. He poked my arm, right on the scar tissue beneath the fabric. Still hiding the monster arm? I flinched. Not from pain, the nerves there were dead, but from the intrusion. Back off, Connor. Touchy? He laughed, raising his hands in mock surrender. Just saying. Mason said you got it doing something stupid. Dropped a crate on yourself or something? I froze. A crate? Is that what Mason told them? Is that what he said? I asked, my voice low. Yeah. Said you were clumsy. Said the army discharged you because you were a liability. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just that he was hiding me. He was lying about me. He was rewriting my history, just like Dad warned. I looked over at Mason. He was beaming, raising a toast. He looked perfect. The golden child. And I was just the clumsy little brother who needed to be hidden away. But the heat was rising. Not just the temperature, but the pressure inside my chest. The jazz band shifted tempo, moving into something upbeat and brassy. A saxophone wailed. To everyone else, it was festive. To me, it sounded like a scream. I closed my eyes for a second, just trying to center myself. But the heat of the flannel shirt against my skin betrayed me. It wasn't the humidity of a suburban backyard anymore. The smell of charcoal smoke from the grill shifted in my brain. It became sharper, acrid. It smelled like burning diesel and melting rubber. I was back there. Kandahar, 2014. The flashback hit me with the force of a physical blow. The colors of the party. The white linens, the blue pool, bleached out into blinding white sun and brown dust. We were the 3rd platoon. We were on a routine supply run, moving medical crates to a forward operating base. I was driving the lead MRAP. Caleb was in the passenger seat, riding shotgun. Caleb. He was 22. A kid from Ohio with a smile that could disarm an IED. He had a picture of a girl taped to the dashboard, but he never talked about his parents. He only ever talked about the old man. When I get back, Caleb had said that morning, cleaning his rifle. I'm gonna find him. I'm gonna walk up to his front door, stand at attention, and tell him I did good. Your dad? I asked. My biological father, Caleb corrected. He doesn't know I exist. Mom gave me up, but I found out who he is. He's big brass, Josh. A real hero. I joined up to be like him. I just want him to know I didn't turn out to be a waste of space. I remembered laughing. You're not a waste of space, Caleb. You're the best shot in the company. Yeah, well, we'll see. The memory shifted. The road. The sudden silence that always precedes the noise. Click. The sound wasn't loud. It was a pressure wave. The world turned upside down. The IED had been buried deep. It tore through the undercarriage of the vehicle like it was wet cardboard. I remembered the sensation of floating, then the slam of impact. My ears were ringing. A high-pitched whine that drowned out everything. Dust filled the cab. It was thick, choking, tasting of copper and ancient dirt. Caleb! I screamed. I couldn't hear my own voice. I looked over. The passenger side was gone, crushed inward. Caleb was pinned. His legs were trapped under the twisted metal of the dashboard. Fire was licking at the edges of the cabin. I tried to move my right arm to unbuckle, but it wouldn't respond. I looked down. My sleeve was shredded. Blood was pulsing out, bright red arterial spray. Shrapnel had flayed the arm from elbow to shoulder. I didn't feel the pain yet. Adrenaline is a powerful drug. I used my left hand to pop the harness. I fell toward Caleb. Josh, he wheezed. Blood was bubbling at the corner of his mouth. I can't feel my legs. I got you. I grabbed his vest with my good hand. I'm getting you out. Fire, he whispered. The flames were growing. The fuel tank had ruptured. We had seconds. I pulled. He screamed. The metal wouldn't budge. I saw the second device then. A secondary IED, rigged on the door frame, a nasty little surprise waiting for the rescue attempt. The wire was tripped. I didn't think. I threw my body over Caleb's head and chest. I jammed my injured right arm against the door frame, trying to shield his face from the blast. Boom! The second explosion was smaller but closer. Cooked my arm. I could smell my own skin burning. The pain arrived then. A white-hot lightning bolt that shattered my vision. But I held on. I kept my body over his. Medic! I was screaming, but I was the medic. The rest of the squad pulled us out. They dragged us through the sand, the heat of the burning truck searing our backs. They laid us out in the dirt. I was fading. The sky was so blue. I turned my head. Caleb was looking at me. His eyes were glazing over. The internal trauma was too much. Josh, he whispered. I had to lean in, my ear against his lips. Save your breath, buddy. Chopper's coming. Tell him, Caleb gasped. A tear cut a clean line through the dust on his cheek. Tell the commander, I wasn't afraid. Tell him his son wasn't afraid. I will. You tell him yourself. No, you tell him. Promise. I promise. He exhaled and he didn't inhale again. I woke up in Landstuhl, Germany, 3 days later. They told me I'd lost 30% of the muscle mass in my arm. They told me I'd never hold a scalpel steady again. They told me Caleb was gone. Excuse me? Hello? The voice snapped me back to the present. I blinked. The brown dust vanished. I was back in the perfectly manicured garden. A woman in a floral dress was holding an empty wine glass out to me. Are you the help? She asked, looking at my flannel shirt. I need a refill. Pinot Grigio. I stared at her glass. My hand was shaking. The ghost of the burning truck was still superimposed over the swimming pool. I don't work here, I managed to say. Oh, she frowned. Well, you look like you do. Where is the waiter? She walked away, annoyed. I looked down at my arm. Under the flannel, the scars were throbbing. Phantom pain. It always happened when I remembered Caleb. I needed water. I walked toward the poolside bar. Mason was there, holding court with a group of men. He saw me and his smile faltered. He excused himself and intercepted me. "What are you doing?" he hissed, grabbing my left elbow. "You look like a zombie. Smile, for God's sake. The colonel is about to make his entrance." "I need a minute, Mason." "You don't have a minute. You have a job. Keep the coolers full. Keep the trash empty. And stay out of the way. Dad left us nothing, Josh. This deal with Briggs? It's my inheritance. It's the only way I keep this house. Don't blow this for me. Is that all you care about? The house? The money? It's called legacy, Josh. Something you wouldn't understand living in that dump of an apartment. Now, get back to work." He shoved me, lightly, but it was enough. I stumbled back. My heel caught the edge of an uneven paver. I flailed, trying to catch my balance. My right arm, my bad arm, swung out and hit the edge of a table loaded with appetizers. A silver platter of shrimp cocktail went flying. Cocktail sauce splattered everywhere. It hit the white tablecloth. It hit the deck. And it hit Tiffany's dress. The music stopped. "You idiot!" Tiffany shrieked. She looked at the red stain on her white dress. "Look what you did." Mason turned purple. I told you he was a liability. Every eye in the party was on me. I stood there, the flannel shirt sticking to my back, the shame burning hotter than the scars. And then the sliding glass doors of the house opened. "What is the meaning of this commotion?" A deep, gravelly voice boomed. It was him, Colonel Thomas Briggs, retired U.S. Marine Corps. He stood framed in the doorway, wearing a crisp suit, his posture rigid as a steel beam. He had eyes like flint and a jaw that looked like it could chew rocks. He looked at the spilled shrimp. He looked at Tiffany's dress. He looked at Mason's red face. And then he looked at me. The silence that descended on the backyard was heavy, suffocating. Even the cicadas seemed to stop buzzing. Mason recovered first. He put on his best sycophantic smile and rushed toward the colonel. Colonel Briggs. So sorry about this. Just a minor mishap with the staff. My brother here, he's a bit clumsy. I was just about to have him escorted out so we can continue the celebration." Tiffany was dabbing at her dress with a napkin, shooting daggers at me. "He's ruined it," she whimpered, playing the victim perfectly. "My dress, the party. Daddy, tell him to leave." Colonel Briggs didn't move. He descended the patio steps slowly, his cane tapping a rhythmic click-clack on the stone. He ignored Mason. He ignored Tiffany. He walked straight toward me. I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to retreat to the safety of my truck. But I couldn't move. I stood at attention, a reflex drilled into me years ago. Mason stepped in front of me, trying to block the colonel's view. "Really, sir? Don't waste your time. Joshua he's got some issues, mentally, since the accident." "Move, Mason," the colonel said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had the weight of command. Mason stepped aside instantly, looking confused. The colonel stopped 3 feet from me. He was shorter than me, but he felt 10 feet tall. He looked me up and down. He looked at the flannel shirt. He looked at the sweat on my forehead. "It's 90 degrees, son," Briggs said. "Why are you wearing winter gear?" I swallowed hard. I was asked to cover up, sir." "Asked? By whom?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to rat out my brother. That wasn't how I was raised. Mason interjected, a nervous laugh escaping his throat. "It's just better that way, sir. He has a disfigurement. It's unsightly. We didn't want to upset the guests." The colonel's eyes narrowed. He looked at Mason with something that looked like disappointment, then turned back to me. Take it off. Sir. The shirt. Take it off. Daddy, no. Tiffany gasped. It's gross. Quiet, Tiffany, Briggs snapped. He looked at me, his eyes softening just a fraction. I want to see the soldier. My hands were shaking as I undid the buttons. I slipped the flannel off my shoulders. A collective gasp went through the crowd. In the harsh afternoon sun, the scar was violent. The skin was shiny, tight, and twisted. It looked like melted wax poured over bone. The gouge where the shrapnel had taken the muscle was a deep depression. It wasn't pretty. It was a map of pain. Mason looked away, disgusted. Connor snickered into his beer. Frankenstein, I heard him whisper. But Colonel Briggs didn't look away. He stepped closer. He reached out a hand, his fingers trembling slightly. He didn't touch the skin, but he traced the air above it. He was looking at the pattern of the burn, the angle of the entry wounds. He knew. Only another soldier would know. He looked up at my face. His eyes were watery. This isn't from a crate, is it? No, sir. This is burn scarring consistent with high-grade explosives. And that. He pointed to a small, star-shaped pucker near my elbow. That's shrapnel. Secondary blast. Yes, sir. Where? Kandahar. Route Hyena. The colonel's face went pale. He dropped his cane, clattered on the stones. When? October 14th, 2014. The colonel froze. The color drained from his face completely. He swayed, and for a second, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. I instinctively reached out to steady him with my good arm. 11th MEU? He whispered. Yes, sir. Attached to the 3rd platoon. The colonel stared at me. He looked as if he was seeing a ghost. Operation Iron Storm? Yes, sir. Mason tried to intervene again. Dad, look, he's probably lying. Josh likes to make up stories to get sympathy. He was a cook or something, he wasn't in combat. Shut up, the colonel roared. The sound was so loud it made the microphone on the bandstand feedback. Briggs turned back to me. He straightened his spine. He took a deep breath. And then, right there in the middle of the shrimp cocktail and the spilled wine, the colonel snapped his heels together. He raised his right hand to his brow. Perfect, sharp salute. I salute you, soldier, Briggs said, his voice cracking with emotion. For bearing the burden. The silence now was different. It wasn't awkward. It was stunned. I slowly raised my hand and returned the salute. Thank you, sir. Briggs dropped his hand. He looked at Mason, then at Tiffany. His eyes were cold now. You told me he was a liability. You told me he was a disgrace. You made a hero cover his battle scars so you could eat ribs. It's not. It's optics, Dad. Mason stammered, sweat beading on his upper lip. We're trying to build a brand here. Refined. Elegant. There is nothing more elegant than sacrifice. Briggs spat. You are not the man I thought you were, Mason. Briggs turned to me. What is your name, son? Joshua, sir. Joshua Miller. Joshua, he repeated, rolling the name around in his mouth. Come with me. We have whiskey to drink. And I have questions. He picked up his cane and walked toward the house. And someone get this man a clean shirt. A short-sleeved one. I followed him. As I passed Mason, our eyes met. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was terrified. He saw his inheritance, his funding, his legacy walking away from him. You're going to pay for this? Mason whispered. I didn't stop. I walked into the house, leaving the heat behind. The colonel's study was a sanctuary of dark wood and leather. It smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper. He poured me a glass of 18-year-old scotch. My hand was still shaking, but the warmth of the alcohol helped settle the nerves. We talked for an hour. He asked about the deployment. He asked about the tactics. But strangely, he avoided asking about the specific men who died. It was like he was dancing around a wound he didn't want to touch. He told me he was planning to start a massive foundation for veterans, a rehabilitation center worth millions. I need someone on the board who understands the reality, Briggs said. looking me in the eye. Not some suit like Mason. Someone who has bled. I want you to run the outreach program, Joshua. I was stunned. Sir, I fix cars now. I haven't led anything in years. You led men through hell. You can lead a foundation. When I finally left the study, night had fallen. The party was winding down. I walked to the gate to wait for my ride. I had moved my truck earlier. I heard voices near the rose bushes. Hushed, frantic whispers. He's going to cut us out, Tiff. Did you hear him? He's talking about putting Josh on the board. The board? That's a 6-figure salary. That's control over the trust fund. It was Mason. Well, fix it, Tiffany hissed. You said Josh was a loser. You said he was unstable. He is. Look, Dad is just emotional right now. He sees a uniform and gets sentimental. We need to remind him of the reality. Or create a new reality. What do you mean? Sophie, Mason said. Your sister Sophie. Her show, Morning Truth. It has huge ratings. So we get Josh on the show. We frame it as a hero's homecoming piece. But we feed Sophie the real intel. The medical records I acquired. What medical records? The ones from his rehab stint. The depression. The night terrors. We paint him as mentally unfit. A ticking time bomb. If he snaps on live TV, or if we prove he's a fraud, Dad will drop him like a hot potato. He won't let a psycho run his foundation. I stood in the shadows, my blood turning to ice. Inheritance. Trust fund. That's all I was to them. An obstacle to their money. They were willing to destroy my reputation, my sanity, just to secure a payout. I slipped away before they saw me. 2 days later, the call came. It wasn't Mason. It was Sophie, my younger sister. Sophie was the baby of the family. She was sweet, but ambitious. She had clawed her way up to be a producer and host at the local news station. Josh, she chirped. Guess what? I heard about the barbecue. I am so sorry I missed it. But listen, Mason told me everything. He feels terrible. Does he? I asked dryly. Yes, he wants to make it up to you. He pitched me an idea. A segment on my show. Unsung Heroes. We want to feature you. Tell your story. The Colonel will be watching. It's a chance to really launch this foundation idea. Sophie, did Mason write the questions? No, I did. Mason just gave me some background info to help with the research. Come on, Josh. Do it for Mom? She'd be so proud to see you on TV. I hesitated. I knew it was a trap. But I also remembered the letter in the cigar box. Don't let him rewrite your history. If I ran away, Mason won. If I stayed silent, his version of the truth, that I was a crazy, clumsy failure, would become the official record. Okay, Sophie, I said. I'll do it. Great. Friday morning. Live broadcast. 9 a.m. Wear your uniform if you still have it. Or a suit. Just look sharp. I hung up. I knew what I had to do. I went to my closet. I dug out my class A uniform. It smelled of mothballs. I brushed it off. I polished the brass. But I needed one more thing. I drove to the storage unit where I kept the footlocker I hadn't opened in 7 years. The one with Caleb's things. I opened it. Inside was a folded flag, a few letters, and a set of dog tags. I picked up the tags. Caleb J. Reeve. I flipped them over. There was a piece of masking tape on the back of the silencer, written in Caleb's scrawl. Next of kin, Colonel T. Briggs, bio father. I stared at the tape. My heart stopped. Caleb Reeve. Colonel Thomas Briggs. Reeve was the Colonel's son. His biological son. The flashback at the barbecue. When I mentioned Operation Iron Storm, the Colonel reacted not just because he knew the battle, but because he knew his son was there. But he didn't know Caleb was my Caleb. He didn't know I was the one who held him when he died. And Mason? Did Mason know? I remembered Mason bragging about intercepting mail years ago to protect Mom from bills. Had he intercepted letters from the military? Had he hidden the truth about Caleb to keep the Colonel in the dark? To prevent any emotional connection that might threaten Mason's status as the favorite son-in-law? If Mason knew who Caleb was, and he was trying to paint me as a liar, I clenched the dog tags in my fist. This wasn't just a TV interview anymore. This was a reckoning. The television studio was freezing. It smelled of hairspray and ozone. I sat in the green room, staring at the monitor. My reflection looked strange in the makeup mirror. The stylist had tried to cover the scar on my neck with concealer, but I wiped it off when she wasn't looking. I was wearing my uniform. It was a little tight in the shoulders, but the ribbons were straight. Mason walked in. He looked smug. He was wearing a three-piece suit. "You look presentable," he said, checking his watch. "Listen, Josh. Just follow Sophie's lead. Don't go off script. Keep it short. We don't want you rambling about blood and guts. It's a morning show, people are eating cereal." "Where is the Colonel?" I asked. "Oh, he couldn't make it. Not feeling well. But he's watching from home. So make us look good." He lied. I knew he lied. I had texted the Colonel's personal aide that morning. The Colonel was in the building. Mason had likely told the Colonel the wrong time or the wrong studio to keep him away. "5 minutes to air," the floor director shouted. I walked onto the set. The lights were blindingly bright. Sophie was sitting on a white sofa, holding a stack of blue cue cards. She smiled at me, but her eyes looked nervous. She kept glancing at the teleprompter. "Welcome back," Sophie said to the camera as the red light blinked on. "Today we have a special segment, a story of family, struggle, and the difficult truth about our veterans. Please welcome my brother, Joshua Miller." I nodded to the camera. "So, Joshua," Sophie began, her voice taking on a serious journalistic tone. "You served in Afghanistan. You came home with a severe injury. We're all very proud. But there's been some confusion about how exactly that injury happened." I stiffened. "Here it comes. Sources close to your platoon have suggested that this wasn't a combat injury." Sophie read from the teleprompter. "Mason must have written this, that it was actually a result of negligence, an accident involving a vehicle while you were off duty, and that the trauma you claim to have is actually exaggerated." The studio was silent. I could see Mason standing behind the cameraman, arms crossed, a predator's grin on his face. He wanted me to explode. He wanted me to scream, to flip the table, to prove I was the unstable crazy vet. I took a breath. I looked directly at Sophie. "Is that the question, Sophie? Or is that the script?" Sophie blinked, flustered. I'm asking for the truth, Josh." "The truth," I said calmly, leaning forward. "The truth is that on October 14th, 2014, I wasn't on a motorcycle. I was in a burning MRAP. I was holding a 22-year-old boy while he bled to death. But the records," Sophie stammered, looking at Mason for help. "The records my brother showed you." I pulled a folded paper from my pocket. It wasn't the script. It was the letter from my dad. And the dog tags. "I didn't come here to defend myself," I said. "My honor doesn't need a defense. I came here to deliver a message. A message I promised to deliver 6 years ago." I held up the dog tags. The metal glinted under the studio lights. The soldier who died in my arms? His name was Caleb Reeve. I heard a gasp from the darkness behind the cameras. It wasn't Mason. Caleb didn't have a family, I continued, my voice steady, though tears were burning my eyes. Or so he thought. But he spent his whole life trying to be good enough for a father he never met. A father he watched from afar. A father who is a hero. I looked directly into the lens. He told me to tell his commander that he wasn't afraid. He told me to tell Colonel Thomas Briggs that his son died standing his ground. Crash. Somewhere offset, a chair fell over. Mason's face went white. He lunged forward. "Cut the feed. Cut it now. He's having an episode. Let him speak." A roar came from the shadows. Colonel Thomas Briggs stepped into the light. He wasn't supposed to be there, according to Mason. But there he was. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. He was trembling. "Dad," Sophie whispered. "What is he talking about?" Briggs walked onto the set, ignoring the cameras, ignoring the live feed. He walked straight to me. He looked at the dog tags in my hand. "Reeve," Briggs choked out. "Caleb Reeve. His mother's maiden name." "He was your son, sir," I said softly, handing him the tags. "And he died saving my life. That's where this scar came from. I used my arm to shield his face from the fire so his father could have an open casket. I didn't know it was you. Not until I saw the files in my brother's trash." Briggs took the tags. He pressed them to his forehead. The great, stoic Marine broke. He sobbed, a sound of raw, guttural grief that echoed through the studio. "You knew." Briggs turned to Mason. His voice dropped to a whisper that was scarier than his shout. "You knew." Mason was backing away. "No. I saw the name, but I didn't know. I thought it was a coincidence. I was protecting the family assets." "Josh is a liar. I found these in your safe, Mason," I said, pulling out a bundle of unopened letters. "Letters Caleb wrote to the colonel. You intercepted them. You kept a son from his father because you didn't want another heir to split the inheritance with." The silence in the studio was absolute. The camera operators were frozen. Sophie had her hands over her mouth, horror dawning in her eyes as she realized she had been used to destroy her own brother. Briggs looked at Mason. The look wasn't anger. It was total erasure. "You are done," Briggs said. "You are not my family. You are nothing." The producer finally cut the feed, going to a commercial break, but the damage or the justice was already done. The clip was viral before we even left the building. The aftermath in the green room was a scene of carnage. Not physical, but social execution. Mason tried to rally. "Dad, listen. It's a misunderstanding. I was protecting your reputation. An illegitimate child? Think of the scandal." Colonel Briggs stood up. He looked 10 years older, but stronger than I had ever seen him. He still clutched Caleb's dog tags in his left hand. "The only scandal, Mason," Briggs said, his voice deadly calm, "is that I let a snake like you into my house. You wanted the legacy? You wanted the money? It's gone. The trust is frozen. The foundation will be rewritten." "You can't do that," Mason screamed. "I have contracts. I have the Porsche lease. I have the mortgage." "Get a lawyer," Briggs said. "You'll need a cheap one, because you're not getting a dime from me." Mason turned to Tiffany. Tell him we need the support." Tiffany looked at her husband. She looked at the pathetic, sweating man who had just been exposed as a monster on live TV. Then she looked at her father. She saw the writing on the wall. The money was with the colonel. "I didn't know," Tiffany lied. She stepped away from Mason. "Daddy, I swear, Mason handled all the mail. He told me Josh was dangerous. I was scared." Mason looked at his wife, betrayed by his own accomplice. You helped me burn the first letter." "Liar," Tiffany shrieked. "I want a divorce." I watched them turn on each other. The rats were fleeing the sinking ship. I walked over to the colonel. "Sir, I'm sorry you had to find out like this." Briggs looked at me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "You carried him," he said. "You carried my boy when I couldn't. You took the fire for him. I tried to save him, sir. I failed." "No," Briggs shook his head. "You saved his memory. You saved the truth. That is not failure." We walked out of the studio together. Outside, in the parking lot, a tow truck was backing up to Mason's parking spot. It seemed the bank moved fast when news of fraud and disownment hit the airwaves. Or maybe Briggs had made a call during the commercial break. I saw Mason run out, tie undone, screaming at the driver who was hooking up the silver Porsche 911. "Hey, that's my car. Do you know who I am?" The driver didn't even look up. "Yeah, I saw the show, buddy. You're the guy who stole the dead soldier's letters. Step back or I'm calling the cops." Mason stood there watching his status symbol, his identity, being dragged away. He looked over at me. I was standing by my dented Ford F-150. He looked small. He didn't look like the golden child anymore. He looked like a scared kid who realized the game was rigged, and he had lost. I got in my truck. The colonel got in the passenger seat. "Where to, sir?" I asked. "To the cemetery," Briggs said softly. "I have a son to meet." I put the truck in gear. My arm throbbed, but for the first time in 6 years it didn't feel like pain. Felt like healing. The drive to the cemetery was the longest 40 minutes of my life. My 2015 Ford F-150 isn't a luxury vehicle. The suspension is stiff, the engine hums a little too loud, and the AC rattles when you push it past medium. But Colonel Briggs didn't seem to mind. He sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the passing strip malls and highway overpasses, clutching those dog tags like they were a lifeline in a storm. We didn't speak. What was there to say? The air between us was heavy with the ghosts of two men. The son he never knew, and the brother I thought I knew. When we pulled into the Veterans Memorial Cemetery, the sun was beginning to dip, casting long golden shadows across the endless rows of white marble headstones. It's a sobering sight. Thousands of stories, thousands of sacrifices, all reduced to precise geometric lines in the grass. I knew exactly where to go. Section 60, row 14. I parked the truck. The colonel opened the door, his movements slow and brittle. He looked older than he had that morning. The revelation had aged him a decade in an hour. He leaned heavily on his cane as we walked across the grass. "I didn't know he was here," Briggs whispered, his voice catching in the wind. I assumed his mother had him buried in Ohio." "She wanted to," I said softly, "but Caleb left instructions. He wanted to be here, among the brothers." We stopped in front of the stone. Caleb J. Reeve, SGT, U.S. Army, October 12, 1992 to October 14, 2014. Operation Iron Storm. The colonel stood there for a long time. He didn't cry. Marines of his generation don't cry easily, even when their hearts are breaking. He just trembled. He reached out and traced the letters of the name with his thumb, the same way he had traced the air above my scar. "He wrote to me," Briggs said, talking to the stone. "Joshua told me you wrote to me. I never got the letters, son. I never knew." He turned to me, his eyes red-rimmed. "Did he suffer?" It's the question every family member asks. It's the question you learn to lie about. But Briggs was a soldier. He deserved the truth. "He was in pain, sir. But he wasn't afraid. He was worried about you. He was worried you'd be disappointed in him." Briggs let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Disappointed? He was a hero. And I was a blind old fool playing house with a family of vipers." He took the dog tags I had given him and draped them over the corner of the headstone. Then he took a step back, straightened his spine, and rendered a slow, agonizingly perfect salute. "Dismissed, Sergeant," he whispered. "Rest easy." The ride back was different. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was companionable. We stopped at a diner, a greasy spoon place with vinyl seats and bad coffee. It wasn't the kind of place Mason would ever be caught dead in. "I'm divorcing Evelyn," Briggs said suddenly, staring at his black coffee. I almost choked on my water. "Sir, I'm done, Joshua. I'm 70 years old. I don't have time left to waste on people who view love as a transaction." Evelyn, she knew about Mason's ambition. She fueled it. She might not have known about the letter specifically, but she created the environment where Mason felt comfortable doing it. She raised a daughter who cares more about a dress than a human being, and she enabled a son-in-law who would sell his own brother for a promotion. He looked at me, his gaze piercing. "I'm rewriting my will. The lawyers are coming tomorrow. Mason is out. Tiffany is out. Evelyn gets the minimum required by state law, and not a penny more." "Sir, you don't have to tell me this." "I do," he interrupted, "because I'm putting you in charge of the foundation, the Briggs Veteran Rehabilitation Center. We break ground next month. I can't run a multi-million-dollar foundation, Colonel. I fix transmissions. You have a degree in biology you never used because you were too busy paying off your mother's debts. You were a squad leader. You have integrity. I can hire accountants to count the beans. I can hire lawyers to read the contracts. I can't hire a heart, Joshua. I need you. He reached across the table and put his hand on my scarred arm. Caleb can't run it. So you have to. For him. I looked at this man. This stranger who had become a father figure in the span of an afternoon. I nodded. Okay. For him. The next few months were a blur of chaos and reconstruction. The fallout from the broadcast was nuclear. Mason didn't go down quietly. He fought like a cornered rat. He sued the network for defamation. He sued me for emotional distress. He even tried to sue the colonel for breach of contract regarding some business loan. But the colonel's lawyers were sharks. They buried Mason in paperwork. They exposed every shady deal, every cooked book, every intercepted letter. It turned out Mason hadn't just hidden Caleb's letters. He had been embezzling from the colonel's accounts for years to fund his lavish lifestyle. The forensic accountants found transfers labeled consulting fees that went straight into Mason's private offshore accounts. They found credit card statements for business trips that were actually vacations with mistresses. The divorce was ugly. Tiffany filed the papers the week after the show. She claimed she was a victim of Mason's manipulation, trying to salvage her relationship with her father's money. But the colonel was done. He paid for her lawyer, but he cut off her allowance. For the first time in her life, Tiffany had to look for a job. I heard she ended up working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. It was honest work, and I hoped, for her sake, it would teach her some humility. Sophie was a different story. She showed up at my apartment door 2 weeks after the show. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her eyes were puffy. She held a box of donuts and looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I quit," she said before I could even say hello. "You quit the show?" "I quit the station. I quit the industry. I can't be part of a machine that chews people up like that. I let him use me, Josh. I let Mason write the script. I didn't check the sources. I just wanted the ratings. I'm so sorry." She started crying. Right there in my hallway. Pulled her into a hug. Sophie was the baby. She had been poisoned by Mason and Mom's worldview, but she wasn't rotten to the core. She had a conscience. "It's okay, sophomore. You didn't know. I should have known. I'm a journalist, for God's sake. I should have asked you." She pulled away, wiping her nose. "I want to help. With the foundation. I don't want a salary. I need to do something real. I can handle the press releases. I can handle the social media. I can make sure the truth gets out this time." I hired her on the spot, and she was brilliant. She took the story, the real story, and she amplified it. She didn't make it about me or the scandal. She made it about Caleb. She launched a campaign called The Unseen Scars, encouraging veterans to share their stories of transition. It went viral not because of drama, but because of authenticity. While Sophie handled the public, I handled the dirt. We bought a massive plot of land upstate, an old resort that had gone bust. It was a wreck, but the bones were good. I was there every day at 5 a.m., working alongside the contractors. I didn't wear long sleeves anymore. It was strange at first. The construction crews would stare. I'd see their eyes dart to the gnarled flesh of my arm when I pointed at a blueprint or lifted a beam. But I didn't flinch. I let them look. And eventually they stopped staring and started working. One day, a plumber named Mike walked up to me during a lunch break. He was a big guy, tattoos up to his neck. He pointed at my arm with his sandwich. "Fallujah, 2006, he said, pulling up his own shirt to reveal a jagged scar across his ribs. "Sniper round. Kandahar, 2014, I replied. "IED. He nodded. "Good to meet you, brother. Good to meet you, Mike." That was it. No pity. No horror. Just recognition. That's what we were building here. Place where you didn't have to hide. 6 months into the project, I received a notification on my phone. A blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it later that night. Josh, it's Mason. His voice sounded hollow. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, raspy quality. Look, I know you're busy. Big CEO now, right? Funny how that works. I need a favor. The lawyers are killing me, Josh. Tiffany is going for full custody of the kids. She says I'm an unfit father because I'm broke. I'm living in a motel off the interstate. They took the Porsche. They took the condo. Mom won't even talk to me because I embarrassed the family. Can you believe that? After everything I did for her. He paused. I could hear traffic in the background. I just need a loan. $5,000. Just to get a lawyer for the custody hearing. I'll pay you back. I swear. We're brothers, right? Blood is thicker than water. Call me. I sat in my office, looking out at the framework of the new therapy wing. I thought about the college fund Mason had promised to set up for my future kids, which I later found out he never started. I thought about the way he looked at me at the barbecue. He looks like a thug. I didn't call him back. Instead, I wrote a check for $5,000. I made it payable to the law offices of Sarah Jenkins, his wife's divorce lawyer, and I put a note in the memo line for the children's custody fund. I wasn't going to give Mason a dime to fight. I was going to ensure his children were protected from him. He needed to hit rock bottom. He needed to learn that actions have consequences that money can't fix. Blood is thicker than water, yes, but the blood of the covenant, the bond one made with Caleb, with the colonel, with the men I served with, is thicker than the water of the womb. The grand opening of the Briggs Center happened on a crisp October morning, exactly 2 years after the barbecue incident. The leaves were turning russet and gold, mirroring the colors of the medals pinned to the chests of the veterans in the crowd. We didn't do a ribbon cutting. Ribbons are flimsy. Instead, we had a ceremonial breaking of the chains across the front gate, symbolizing the breaking of the stigma of PTSD. Colonel Briggs was in a wheelchair now. The cancer he had been hiding from everyone, even me at first, had become aggressive. He was frail, his skin like parchment, but his eyes were still fierce. He insisted on wearing his dress blues. I stood at the podium. My suit was tailored, but I wasn't wearing a jacket. My right sleeve was rolled up. The scar was visible to the cameras, to the crowd, to the world. "Welcome home," I said into the microphone. Simple. True. The crowd erupted. I saw Sophie in the front row, snapping photos, tears streaming down her face. She had become an advocate, a real force for good. Beside her was Mom. Mom looked smaller. She was wearing a simple dress, not the flashy designer gear Mason used to buy her. She had lost the house, of course. Mason's bankruptcy had dragged her finances down with him. She lived in a small senior apartment now. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see disappointment. I saw regret. She waved a tentative hand. I nodded back. We were rebuilding slowly, but the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the son seeking approval. I was the man offering grace. After the ceremony, I wheeled the colonel into the private garden we had named Caleb's Grove. It was quiet there, surrounded by oak trees. "You did good, Joshua," Briggs wheezed, his hand gripping mine. His grip was weak, but his palm was warm. "We did good, sir." "No, you. I just provided the checkbook. You provided the soul." He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "I'm tired, son." "I know, Thomas. I know. Promise me something. Anything. Don't let Mason back in. Not until he earns it. Not until he changes. Really changes. Don't let him poison this place. I promise. And tell Caleb. Tell him I'm coming." Colonel Thomas Briggs died 3 days later. He passed away in his sleep, in a room overlooking the garden. The funeral was a military affair. Full honors. The 21-gun salute cracked the air, startling the birds. I was the one who received the folded flag. Not Tiffany. Not Evelyn. Me. "On behalf of a grateful nation," the young officer said, looking me in the eye. I held the flag to my chest. Felt heavy. Felt like responsibility. Mason was there. He stood at the very back, near the cemetery gates. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit, probably bought from a thrift store. He looked gray. He looked beaten. He didn't try to approach the family. He didn't try to make a scene. He just watched. When the service was over, and the crowd began to disperse, I walked over to him. He flinched when he saw me coming. He expected anger. He expected me to have him removed. "Joshua," he said, his voice quiet, I just wanted to pay respects." "Did you?" I asked. He looked at the ground. "I'm working at a warehouse now. Amazon Fulfillment Center. Night shift. It's hard work." "It is," I agreed. "My back still hurts from the years I spent loading trucks while you laughed at my little job." "I know," Mason swallowed. "I know I was a prick. I know I was worse than that. I lost everything, Josh. Tiffany won't let me see the kids but once a month. I'm living in a basement studio." He looked up at me, and I saw something I had never seen in Mason's eyes before. Fear. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of humility. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "About the scar. About Caleb. About everything." I looked at him. I could have destroyed him right there. I could have rubbed my success in his face. I could have told him about the millions in the foundation, the awards, the respect I now commanded. But I remembered the letter. "You were born to serve, not to please." Serving doesn't mean enabling, but it also doesn't mean crushing the defeated. "I accept your apology, Mason," I said. He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for 2 years. "Does that mean? Are we okay?" "No," I said firmly. "We are not okay. You tried to destroy me. You stole from a dead man. Apologies don't fix that. Actions do." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card. It wasn't for the foundation. It was for a temp agency that specialized in helping veterans find work, but they also took civilians. "If you keep that job at the warehouse for 6 months," I said. "If you pay your child support on time every month. If you prove you can be a man without a title and a Porsche. Call this number. They might have something better for you. But you start at the bottom, Mason. Just like I did." I pressed the card into his hand. "Earn it." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I walked to my truck. A new truck now, a heavy-duty pickup used for the foundation's work. Sitting in the passenger seat was Sarah. Sarah was the lead physical therapist at the center. She had a laugh that sounded like wind chimes, and she didn't care about scars. We had been dating for a year. She smiled when I opened the door. "You okay?" she asked, taking my hand. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." In the back seat, in a car seat, was a 6-month-old baby boy. We had named him Thomas Caleb Miller. He was sleeping, his tiny hand curled into a fist. I reached back and brushed his cheek with my scarred hand. The skin was rough, but his skin was soft. He stirred, his little fingers opening and grabbing onto my thumb. He held on tight, right over the worst part of the burn. He didn't know it was ugly. He only knew it was strong. He only knew it was his father. I drove us home. The sun was setting, casting a warm, orange glow over the road. I rolled down the window and rested my arm on the sill. The wind hit the scar. Felt cool. Felt real. I wasn't the golden child. I wasn't the CEO in the Porsche. I was Joshua. I was a brother to a fallen soldier. I was a son to a hero. I was a father. And I was finally, truly free. Thank you for walking this road with me. We've come a long way from that barbecue, haven't we? If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this: your value is not determined by the people who refuse to see you. We often spend our lives trying to please the Masons and the Evelyns of the world. People who only love us when we fit into their picture of perfection. We hide our scars, both physical and emotional, because we are afraid of being rejected. But I learned that the right people, the Colonel Briggs, the Sarahs, the Calebs, they don't love you despite your scars. They respect you because of them. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes blood is just a biological accident. Real family are the people who stand beside you in the fire. Real family are the ones who salute you when the world tries to shame you. And remember, justice isn't always about revenge. I didn't need to destroy Mason. He destroyed himself. The best revenge is simply living a life so full of purpose and truth that their lies can no longer touch you. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut ties with a toxic family member to save your own sanity? Or have you found a chosen family that loves you more than your blood relatives ever did? Type "good" in the comments if you believe that character matters more than reputation. Let me know your story. I read every single comment. Thank you for listening. Thank you for respecting the scar, and until next time, stand your ground.